Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing a GeForce GTX 1080 Ti in Alan Wake 2 again, because apparently, since the last time that I tested it, it got an update. They lowered the minimum requirements as well. They asked for a GTX 1070 now, so the 1080 Ti is actually above minimum requirements, which is insane, because the last time around, we were playing this game on the 1080 Ti at 360p to achieve 30 frames per second. Actually, small correction, guys, we actually got 30 FPS at 160p, not 360p. I'll link that video down below if you're interested, but it looks absolutely terrible, and 160p was actually what was needed for it to get 30 FPS. Not even 30 plus, okay? 30 FPS on average. But let's see how it performs this time. This one is the Gigabyte gaming version of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers as usual, and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs here in Tech Power-Ups, GPU-Z, and over on the left, I am pairing it today with a Ryzen 9 7950X3D with half of its cores disabled, so it's the same as a Ryzen 7 7800X3D. I'm also pairing it with 32 gigabytes of RAM, and let's get right into it, shall we? Okay, we're here in the main menu. Let's go over the settings first. I'm starting at 1080p native resolution. Alright, previously, again, I needed to lower this down using FSR to 360p right here, so we could get 30 FPS plus all of the time. And we're using the absolute lowest settings. I manually set everything to the lowest because I'm taking no chances this time. Let's go. And will you look at that, my friends? At native 1080p with the lowest settings, we are getting 50-ish FPS, 40s around here. Oh, it's now playable, guys. Still not what you would expect coming from a 1080 Ti, you know. Similar GPUs in raw performance like the 3060 perform way better in this game still, but that's because the 1080 Ti doesn't support the mesh shaders, you know. And given that it doesn't support them, it's actually performing okay-ish this time. At least it's playable now, so if you've picked up Alan Wake 2 in the meantime and you were very sad that you couldn't play this game with a 1080 Ti, well, here we have it, guys. Now it's playable. Good job, Remedy, by the way. I really thought they would just forget about these old GPUs. They're 7 years old at this point, basically. I mean, the 1080 Ti is Pascal cards in general are actually 8 years old. They released in 2016, 1060, 1080, 1070, and so on. So, yeah, it's good to see some love given to the Pascal series, because these cards, in terms of raw performance, they're not dead yet, as you can clearly see. It lacks mesh shaders, and it's still performing okay. Especially in terms of frame time graph, it's very smooth, no stuttering, VRAM usage is totally under control as well. We got 11 gigabytes of that in this GPU, and I mean, this time, there's no need to utilize any upscalers or anything. It's just gonna work at native 1080p. It might even work at 1440p, so let's try that out, guys. Why not, right? This is way better than previously. I'm also testing it here in this forest area because it's very, very intensive, by the way. Alright, here we have it, 2560 by 1440, native resolution is now applied, minimum settings once again, and yeah, look at that, we're getting 30s. Okay, that's so much better than previously, holy crap. Oh my gosh, for reference, once again, how do I turn on the flashlight? I don't remember it. E? Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's it. Still not really dropping many FPS with the flashlight on. It does usually dip a little bit when you turn on the flashlight, like 1 or 2 FPS. I mean, it can be useful to get 1 or 2 FPS more when we're talking about 30-ish FPS, right? So I'm going to keep it enabled from now on. But yeah, at 1440p, it's playable, guys. Previously, to get these FPS, yeah, it touched 30 right there, we needed 360p. Once again, it's probably going to dip down over here because this is one of the most intensive areas that I've come across so far. No? Okay, there we go. 29. But, I mean, if you overclock the card a little bit, it will stay above 30 FPS all of the time. So, that's not a big deal. The game doesn't really look that amazing here at the lowest settings, of course. But I guess this is a trade-off that you need to live with if you're still running a 1080 Ti and you wish to play games that require newer technologies. Still, I'm impressed, guys. Again, like, this is better than it was a few months ago. Heck, this was better than it was yesterday before the update came. And again, this forest area is one of the most intensive areas in the entire game, and if you go to like the city area, which is right after this mission right here, it will get you more FPS, so it's going to be even more playable then. But yeah, at 1440p, no complaints. It only dipped to 29, not really that big of a deal, you know, and it's stable. It doesn't really stutter too much. I could lock it to like 30 FPS and play with the controller, and that would be a decent experience, right? Good stuff. Very good stuff. I'm very happy right now. Still doesn't look great, but you know, I don't care. Okay, time for 4K resolution. This is definitely not gonna go very well, of course, but we need to test it, right? Just so the benchmark is a bit more complete. And we're getting 20s. All right, it's not really dipping from 20 FPS. I believe these are the FPS that we used to get at 1080p resolution. 4 times lower resolution than this. So, although this is completely unplayable now, of course, and I would never recommend this experience to anybody. Also, can we go here? Wait a second. Okay, no, it's locked. I've never tried to go there, actually. But yeah, this is now completely unplayable. Look at the frame time graph as well. It seems like it is stuttering quite a bit, but in my opinion, I can't really feel those spikes, honestly. Maybe it's because the FPS are already super, super low. But I think even previously at 1440p, we also saw a lot of spikes there, and it wasn't really noticeably stuttery, you know. So there's that. They just lower our 1% lows by a bit. Anyways, yeah, 4K is out of the question, but you can utilize FSR with the 4K resolution, and maybe it will work at like performance. Let's see. Performance FSR renders the game at 1080p, as the menu said, and it actually upscales it, and it looks way better than 1080p resolution native. Wow, I'm impressed with the FSR implementation in this game. I didn't remember it was this good, actually. And it's getting 40s, once again. It's very similar FPS to what we saw at 1080p, right? Maybe a little bit lower. So again, it's super playable. We get better visual fidelity than native 1080p, and if you have a 4K monitor with a 1080 Ti because you bought one in the good old days when this was a 4K gaming GPU, and a very good one at that, yeah, you can still enjoy this game with similar visuals to 4K native. I mean, it's a little bit softer and maybe a little bit fuzzier, but even the hair looks great, guys. And this is lowest settings with FSR2 on top. This is actually crazy. FSR2 is looking fantastic here at performance at 4K. What? I really didn't remember FSR2 to look this good in this particular title, guys. At least at 4K, it works extremely well. I remember the DLSS performance on the GPUs that I tested it on being really, really good, the implementation in this game at 4K resolution. And I remember actually saying with like the 4080 benchmark video that I made that the 4K performance DLSS is probably the way to go with the highest settings because you get good FPS and it still looks very good. But yeah, look at this. Even here, in this little corridor area where it drops the most, it only dips down into the low 30s. This is extremely nice. Okay. I am very happy right now. It's still, again, it's still not getting the performance that it should get, like 3060 performance in terms of raw power, but it's 1,000 times better than playing at these FPS and 360p resolution, right? Actually, we should try that. So I'm going to set FSR to Ultra Performance, which makes it run at 640 by 360 resolution. Extremely low, yeah, and the minimum settings, of course. And look at that, we're getting about double the performance of what we saw. Actually, more than double the performance of what we saw in the last update of the game, guys. The last version, basically. So it's still not getting 60 plus FPS all of the time, which is a bit ridiculous. But it's close to 69 on average. Can we get 69 on average? That would be perfect. If we get 69 on average by the end of the benchmark run, I think these are the perfect settings for the 1080 Ti. I'm joking, of course. It's actually surprising that it dips so often from 60 FPS. This is 360p, guys, being upscaled to 1080p. And again, we see FSR2 making an amazing job of upscaling the image right now. That's insane. The fact that I am looking at a 360p image internally on a 42-inch 4K monitor and it's not all pixelated and terrible is kind of insane. I have seen worse implementations of FSR2 at 1080p quality FSR. You know, like, that's actually crazy. What the heck? This game really works well with upscalers. Anyway, if you fancy that 60 plus FPS experience on average, not all of the time, with the 1080 Ti in Alan Wake 2, you are going to be stuck with 360p resolution still. So just forget about the 60 FPS experience. Get good with 30 FPS, okay? That's definitely the way to play. 1440p, 30 FPS locked, I think it works really well. Or maybe even 1080p with 30 FPS locked, but medium settings instead of the lowest settings. That's what I'm gonna try next. Alright, so I just restarted the game to apply the settings properly, and look at this. We're getting 30 plus still. It's probably gonna dip down into the 20s though. I'm a little bit scared about that. But we're at 1080p native resolution using the medium settings preset, which has some things on high, as you can see. You know, like a lot of the things are actually on high and ultra as well. This is interesting. It's doing a pretty decent job and it looks way better right now, right? Like, it's a night and day difference. It doesn't really drop from 30 FPS very often. I mean, here in this little corridor, once again, super, super intensive. Look at the light, by the way. Damn, the lighting on the jacket as well sometimes. Look at that, on her shoulder. Yeah, that looks great. But yeah, it does dip to 29 FPS from time to time, but most of the time it's actually going to stay above 30, as you can see over here. Not a problem. That's pretty impressive, once again. Coming from these FPS, these exact same FPS at 360p lowest settings to 1080p native resolution, medium settings, is nothing short of amazing. Good job, Remedy, once again. Like, this is now actually playable for the type of game that this is. You don't really need super high FPS. It is, however, stuttering a little bit more than it did at the lowest settings. There are a couple of bigger spikes there in the frame time graph. Not game breaking, really. I could still play like this all day long, but yeah, it can break immersion a little bit sometimes, but it could be because things are loading and whatever. But if you can't stand a little drop here and there from 30 FPS, guys, we can always use quality FSR in this game, which I believe is going to look very good because performance FSR looked pretty decent. And we're getting 40s now. Wow, that's a lot better. Also, I think it looks a little bit less shimmery with FSR quality, which is weird. Because usually it's the opposite. Once you enable FSR in games, it gets really shimmery and pixelated at times and noisy. But here it just got way softer for some reason. But I think this look is still pretty acceptable, especially on a smaller 1080p monitor. You shouldn't really have a problem with visuals. And now it is always gonna stay above 30 FPS. So, once again, 1080 Ti is not dead, after all. Even though it lacks mesh shaders, it's doing a good job at running Alan Wake 2 in one of the most intensive areas. And now we're getting above 40 FPS on average, which is insane. And 1% lows well above that 30 FPS mark. That's been it for this one. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you are planning on buying Alan Wake 2 and playing the game on a 1080 Ti. I mean, it's still not super amazing optimization, but the game looks great here on medium settings using these settings here, and I feel like it's playable. Not sure if I would buy the game at full price, though, to play like this, because if you have a 1080 Ti, probably a high-end buyer, maybe, and you're used to playing games at 1080p high settings at the very least, and 60 FPS. But hey, it is what it is. It's getting old after all, and the game now runs. So let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Love you all. Bye-bye.